The Dragon Ball Super manga has finally returned with Chapter 88, following after the events of the Granola arc. For anyone that doesn't know, this arc falls in between the Granola arc and the Dragon Ball Super superhero movie. Now, for those who have read the chapter, tell me what your thoughts are on it and where do you think this arc will go. But yeah, let's just hop right into it. The first page we open up to goes over the events that took place in the Granola arc and how Goku and Vegeta now have their sights on defeating Frieza. From the looks of it, more so Vegeta than Goku. Moving on, we have this fully colored panel spread which is extremely beautiful, and it's followed by the introduction of Saiyaman X1 and Saiyaman X2. And it kind of clues us in on why Goten and Trunks became heroes in the first place. Apparently it's because of a video game superhero called Clean God, and it's not because of Gohan. But yeah, that's pretty interesting. Now opening up to the actual first couple of pages in the manga, we see a bank robbery in progress and Goten and Trunks arrive to the scene quips in hand and they proceed to save the day. And as they're taking care of business, you'll notice that Goten and Trunks are taking the weapons of the criminals and disposing them in the trash, essentially cleaning up the streets, obviously alluding to who inspired them to become heroes in the first place. Moving along, after the fight, we see Goten and Trunks relaxing on the top of a building, and this is where we find out that 1. Apparently Trunks is not good with computers, which I think we can agree is a bit strange, and 2. Neither of their families are aware of the fact that these two are superheroes. As you can see, Goten getting called home by Chi-Chi due to him being out too long, and essentially alluding to the fact that she isn't aware of what he's doing. And as Goten is getting ready to leave, they both agree that they need to find a better way to suit up, and they come to the conclusion that they should use something similar to what Gohan used back in his Great Saiyaman days. This essentially gets the ball rolling for the chapter. Now these next couple of pages sees Trunks interacting with his grandparents whilst trying to disguise who he is. Nothing really to note here, but the only thing I have to say about this is I find it weird that neither of them were able to find out who he is. I mean, there was a multitude of clues, from Trunks using his normal voice from what we can tell, and the family dinosaur, which I never thought I would ever say. And essentially it interacts with him as if he's family, which Dr. Brief notes. Also, how many other people actually know how to fly on Earth besides the Z-Fighters? I guess it's not that serious, but I thought that, all these coincidences were pretty strange. Also, this panel here shows us that Trunks has been slacking in terms of studying to play superhero, which seems to be a recurring theme with this character, him being lazy and all. As for these panels, they essentially confirm that this arc does take place before the events of the DBS superhero movie, as we can see that Dr. Brief and his wife are talking about how Pan hasn't started kindergarten yet, but we know that in the movie, Pan is already attending school, so that's all this page really does. Moving along, we see that a couple of robots that apparently belong to Capsule Corp have gone haywire and are running throughout the street, followed by a Frankenstein-esque monster, essentially setting up something later in the chapter. Now back over with Trunks, he goes to visit Pilaf in order to do what he had set out to do, and whilst he's here, we get some pretty cheeky interactions between Trunks, Pilaf, Mai, and Bulma. The first being that we find out that Pilaf is actually a pretty smart guy, seeing as he made this watch for Trunks. And 2, apparently the Pilaf gang works at Capsule Corp in exchange for living there, which is crazy in my opinion. And the third thing is, Pilaf is still on his grind for world domination, or whatever he wants the Dragon Balls for at this time, even going as far as making a deal with Trunks so that he could steal them from Bulma without being snitched on in exchange for the transforming suit watch thingy. Now the fourth thing is, through Trunks's and Mai's interactions, it's obvious he has a crush on her, which for those who know her actual age, makes this extremely weird. Also seems as if she isn't interested, which makes sense. She's mentally like 40 to 50 years old, I believe, and Trunks is a teenager. Last but not least, Pilaf's plans get foiled once again due to some cameras. This guy really can't catch a break, man. The next couple of pages are just showing Trunks going to school and still keeping the streets clean, just like his favorite superhero. He pops up to school late, still following the theme that he's pretty lazy, or at least isn't interested in academics, as we see that he's been tardy a number of times. That, and he literally says that he doesn't want to be the future CEO of Capsule Corp and would rather do something more exciting. From my perspective, it seems as if Trunks doesn't know what he wants to do with his life, like a lot of us do, and from the looks of things, his friends bring up the idea to visit an abandoned mansion, but Trunks nopes out of that because apparently he's afraid of ghosts and ghouls. Pretty funny how that works, seeing as he's faced off against threats that could destroy the Earth, but I guess every hero needs their kryptonite, Goku with his needles and Vegeta with his worms, and I guess for Trunks it's Ghost and Ghouls. Now Goten and Trunks are then shown playing video games at Trunks' place, and this is where Trunks reveals that he got 2 tickets to the Clean God movie. You know, the hero that these two were inspired by, and from what it looks like, have been waiting for this movie to release so that they can watch it together. Well, Trunks decides to pull a move right out of Mordecai's book from regular show, and decides to ask Mai instead of bringing Goten. I mean, he could have at least tried to buy 3 instead of leaving Goten out to dry, but hey. Now, unfortunately for Trunks, Mai isn't interested. That, and she's extremely busy due to the helper robots that have been going haywire, as seen earlier in the chapter. So in an attempt to get Mai to go to the movies with him, Trunks decides to get to the bottom of what's going on with the robots and put a stop to them. Also, shout out to Pilaf for being as smart as he is. Feel like somebody needs to say it. Yeah, so after acquiring some info on where the robot mishaps have been happening the most, both Goten and Trunks make their way there in order to look for clues and eventually stumble into another Frankenstein looking monster. And Trunks, being afraid of ghosts and ghouls, craps his pants. Goten finds out that this suspicious looking character is the one who's been causing the Capsule Corp robots to go crazy, and a chase ensues as they follow him back to his hideout, which turns out to be the abandoned mansion that Trunks' friends were trying to get him to visit, and obviously he freaks out. But he builds up the courage to confront the evildoers, and they find out that this mansion is being used as a sushi factory, and that the Frankenstein monsters, yes, there are multiple of them, are working here, alongside the robots they stole in order to help with production. One of these monsters seemingly catch Trunks and Goten and makes his way towards them. Turns out Trunks' friends actually went through with checking this place out, and they're the ones that actually got caught by the monster. Trunks suits up and confronts the bad guys, and from the looks of this, Trunks actually has fans. It's actually kind of cool. But yeah, Trunks makes short work of the ghouls until he comes face to face with the strongest of them, who apparently is built different. Like literally, he's built different, alluding to something later in the chapter. And due to Trunks bashing his watch into a pole earlier this chapter, his watch malfunctions and reverts him back to his normal clothes. Getting Ben 10 vibes here. And before any of his friends identify that it's really Trunks, Goten thinks quickly and destroys the lights and gets Trunks' friends out of the building. He then let them know that what they saw was an illusion, and being the completely gullible side characters they are, they believe him and run off. Back over with Trunks, he'd go into Super Saiyan, suit up, and proceed to one-punch the Frankenstein monster. And once Goten arrives, the two look around the facility looking for clues for what the heck has been going on. They'd stumble across a safe and they'd find a disc that has Dr. Gero written on it, and they take it with them. On their way out, they'd bump into Krillin, who apparently is shaking in his boots, and he informs them that he's looking for undead corpses, alluding to the Frankenstein monsters that Trunks just took on, telling them that apparently bodies have been going missing, and Trunks, hearing this, obviously freaks out. Now within the facility, this is where we find out that it was being ran by Dr. Hedo. If you don't know who he is, he's the person who made Cell Max and the Gammas. These pages show us what he was doing prior to the movie, which was running a sushi business in order to fund his research. We also learned that the Frankenstein monsters are actually androids and are a part of the Alpha series, which is really interesting. But yeah, with the disc being gone and apparently being the only copy he had, Dr. Hedo is stressed about it, and the only clue he has as to where it went would be the crest from Trunks' school. And for the last page, we see that Trunks tries to ask Mai out again, and to his horror, he finds out that due to his actions, he can't take Mai out. I actually find this hilarious. Like, everything he did this chapter was so that he can take Mai out to the movies, and because he accidentally destroyed the robots while taking on the Frankenstein android, she's going to be too busy to attend, which is too funny. Now this chapter was very laid back, and I believe a lot of people are saying that it's not going to be that long, and after reading it, yeah, I can definitely agree. They're already introducing Dr. Hedo so early, rather than taking their time with introducing the character. As for my thoughts on the chapter, I genuinely like it as a break away from all of the fighting we got in the Granola arc, and I hope it does well so that it can give more shine to side characters. It essentially built up Trunks' character a bit more, showing us some of the things that make him tick, his fears, interests, love interests, and a few tidbits of information about him. And that's good and all, but the only criticism I have is, what about Goten? They literally just sidelined him. Here's to hoping that the next chapter we get something that focuses on his character, but that chapter isn't this one. This chapter is obviously setting up the conflict that's bound to happen between Goten, Trunks, and Dr. Hito. Something that I wanted to mention that I thought was interesting is that the androids that Trunks dealt with earlier are a part of the Alpha series, and if you go over to the DBS superhero movie, the Gammas are most likely a part of the Gamma series. So we might see Dr. Hito make a Beta or Omega series of androids to take on Goten and Trunks if he's going off this naming scheme. But yeah, this was a relatively laid back chapter and not a bunch to really talk about. So with that being said, thank you to everyone that watched this video. I hope you have a good day. Peace, peace. Deuce, deuce.